and the Queen tore her hair, for the handkerchief and the dagger were the most valuable things in the kingdom. When the King saw that the search was hopeless, he said: "Never mind, let us make haste and get the wedding over before anything else is lost." And then he asked where the Princess was. Upon this her nurse came forward and said: "Sire, I have been seeking her these 2 hours, but she is nowhere to be found." This was more than the Queen could bear. She gave a shriek of alarm and fainted away, and they had to pour 2 barrels of eau de cologne over her before she recovered. When she came to herself, everybody was looking for the Princess in the greatest terror and confusion, but as she did not appear, the King said to his page: "Go and find the Ambassador Fanfaronade, who is doubtless asleep in some corner, and tell him the sad news." So the page hunted hither and thither, but Fanfaronade was no more to be found than the Princess, the dagger, or the neck handkerchief. Then the King summoned his counsellors and his guards, and accompanied by the Queen went into his great hall. As he had not had time to prepare his speech beforehand, the King ordered that the silence should be kept for 3 hours, and at the end of that time he spoke as follows: "Listen, great and noble men. My dear daughter Mayblossom is lost. Whether she has been stolen away or has simply disappeared I cannot tell. The Queen's neck handkerchief and my sword, which are worth their weight in gold, are also missing, and what is worst of all, the Ambassador Fanfaronade is nowhere to be found. I greatly fear that the King, his master, when he receives no tidings from him, will come to seek him among us, and will accuse us of having made mincemeat of him. Perhaps I could bear even that, if I had any money, but I assure you that the expenses of the wedding have completely ruined me. Advise me, then, my dear subjects, what had I better do to recover my daughter Fanfaronade and the other things?" This was the most eloquent speech the King had been known to make, and when everybody had done admiring it, the Prime Minister made answer: "Sire, we are all very sorry to see you so sorry. We would give everything we value in the world to take away the cause of your sorrow, but this seems to be another of the tricks of the Fairy Carabosse. The Princess's 20 unlucky years were not quite over, and really, if the truth must be told, I noticed that Fanfaronade and the Princess appeared to admire one another greatly. Perhaps this may give some clue to the mystery of their disappearance." Here the Queen interrupted him, saying: "Take care what you say, sir. Believe me, the Princess Mayblossom was far too well brought up to think of falling in love with an ambassador." At this the nurse came forward, and falling on her knees confessed how they had made the little needle hole in the tower, and how the Princess had declared when she saw the ambassador that she would marry him and nobody else. Then the Queen was very angry, and gave the nurse and the cradle rocker and the nursery maid such a scolding that they shook in their shoes. But the Admiral Cocked Hat interrupted her, crying: "Let us be off after this good-for-nothing Fanfaronade, for without a doubt he has run away with our Princess." Then there was a great clapping of hands, and everybody shouted: "By all means let us be after him." So, while some embarked upon the sea, the others ran from kingdom to kingdom, beating drums and blowing trumpets, and wherever a crowd collected they cried: "Whoever wants a beautiful doll, sweetmeats of all kinds, a little pair of scissors, a golden robe, and a satin cap, has only to say where Fanfaronade has hidden the Princess Mayblossom." But the answer everywhere was: "You must go farther. We have not seen them." However, those who went by sea were more fortunate, for after sailing about for some time they noticed a light before them which burned at night like a great fire. At first they dared not go near it, not knowing what it might be, but by and by it remained stationary over Squirrel Island, for, as you have guessed already, the light was the glowing of the carbuncle. The Princess and Fanfaronade, on landing upon the island, had given the boatman 100 gold pieces, and made him promise solemnly to tell no one where he had taken them. But the first thing that happened was that, as he rowed away, he got into the midst of the fleet, and before he could escape the Admiral had seen him and sent a boat after him. When he was searched they found the gold pieces in his pocket, and as they were quite new coins, struck in honour of the Princess's wedding, the Admiral felt certain that the boatman must have been paid by the Princess to aid her in her flight. But he would not answer any questions, and pretended to be deaf and dumb. Then the Admiral said, "Oh, deaf and dumb, is he? Lash him to the mast, and give him a taste of the cat o' nine tails. I don't know anything better than that for curing the deaf and dumb." And when the old boatman saw that he was in earnest, he told all he knew about the Cavalier and the lady whom he had landed upon Squirrel Island, and the Admiral knew it must be the Princess and Fanfaronade. So he gave the order for the fleet to surround the island. Meanwhile the Princess Mayblossom, who was by this time terribly sleepy, had found a grassy bank in the shade, and throwing herself down, had already fallen into a profound slumber, when Fanfaronade, who happened to be hungry and not sleepy, came and woke her, saying, very crossly, "Pray, madam, how long do you mean to stay here? I see nothing to eat, and though you may be very charming, the sight of you does not prevent me from famishing." "What, Fanfaronade!" said the Princess, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. "Is it possible that when I am here with you you can want anything else? You ought to be thinking all the time how happy you are." "Happy!" cried he. "Say, rather unhappy. I wish with all my heart that you were back in your dark tower again." "Darling, don't be cross," said the Princess. "I will go and see if I can find some wild fruit for you." "I wish you might find a wolf to eat you up," growled Fanfaronade. The Princess, in great dismay, ran hither and thither all about the wood, tearing her dress and hurting her pretty white hands with the thorns and brambles, but she could find nothing good to eat, and at last she had to go back sorrowfully to Fanfaronade. When he saw that she came empty-handed, he got up and left her, grumbling to himself. The next day they searched again, but with no better success. "Alas!" said the Princess, "if only I could find something for you to eat, I should not mind being hungry myself." "No, I should not mind that either," answered Fanfaronade. "Is it possible," said she, "that you would not care if I died of hunger? Oh, Fanfaronade, you said you loved me!" "That was when we were in quite another place and I was not hungry," said he. "It makes a great difference in one's ideas to be dying of hunger and thirst on a desert island." At this the Princess was dreadfully vexed, and she sat down under a white rose bush and began to cry bitterly. "Happy roses," she thought to herself. "They have only to blossom in the sunshine and be admired, and there is nobody to be unkind to them." And the tears ran down her cheeks and splashed onto the rose tree roots. Presently she was surprised to see the whole bush rustling and shaking, and a soft little voice from the prettiest rosebud said, "Poor Princess, look in the trunk of that tree, and you will find a honeycomb, but don't be foolish enough to share it with Fanfaronade." Mayblossom ran to the tree, and sure enough there was the honey. Without losing a moment she ran with it to Fanfaronade, crying gaily, "See, here is a honeycomb that I have found. I might have eaten it up all by myself, but I had rather share it with you." But without looking at her or thanking her, he snatched the honeycomb out of her hands, and ate it all up, every bit, without offering her a morsel. Indeed, when she humbly asked for some, he said mockingly that it was too sweet for her, and would spoil her teeth. Mayblossom, more downcast than ever, went sadly away and sat down under an oak tree, and her tears and sighs were so piteous that the oak fanned her with his rustling leaves and said, "Take courage, pretty Princess, all is not lost yet. Take this pitcher of milk and drink it up, and whatever you do, don't leave a drop for Fanfaronade." The Princess, quite astonished, looked round, and saw a big pitcher full of milk, but before she could raise it to her lips the thought of how thirsty Fanfaronade must be after eating at least 15 pounds of honey made her run back to him and say, "Here is